Have you ever needed to whip up something visual, like maybe a flyer for an event or a presentation, something like that, and you just get that feeling, that dread, thinking about, fighting with some super complex software, the kind that feels like it needs a degree, right? Or maybe worse, you just give up and use Word or something basic, and it looks, well, blocky. But what if you could just make it in minutes and have it look genuinely good? How did design, which used to be just for highly trained pros, suddenly become something almost anyone can tackle? And maybe even weirder, how did the huge companies making that complex software kind of miss this massive shift? The answer, as we're about to get into, it's not just a cool business story. It's this deep paradox. It really shows how even successful, like really well-managed companies can get blindsided. So today we're doing a deep dive into Canva, its incredible rise, and how its journey is like the perfect example of this key business theory, the innovator's dilemma by Clayton Christensen.
Exactly. And for you listening, this isn't just about, a design tool. It's really about understanding this fundamental business puzzle, why sometimes making what seem like good management decisions, the very things that make companies successful, can actually lead them down the wrong path when a certain type of innovation comes along. So our mission today, unpack these core ideas of disruptive innovation using a real-world example that might make you rethink how progress even happens.
Okay, let's jump right into that paradox then, because it feels, well, almost illogical, right?
Yeah.
Successful companies, well-managed, good data, solid plans. Why do they so often fail when some new, maybe simpler, initially kind of worse technology shows up?
It absolutely defies intuition, and that's precisely what Clayton Christensen's book, The Innovator's Dilemma, back in '97, really dug into. He found that the very practices that get companies to the top, like really listening to their best customers, chasing higher profit margins, those things can actually become a trap. They can make companies blind to opportunities that, well, at first glance, look totally unappealing. The classic example he used, the one that really illustrates this, is from the disk drive industry. Think back like '70s and '80s. Drives were huge, maybe 14 inches across. Then they got smaller 8-inch, 5.25, down to 3.5-inch drives. And each time a smaller one emerged, the big established players dominated. How? By doing exactly what you'd expect. They made their existing products better, improved the performance metrics their main customers cared about, and chased those higher margins. Always higher margins.
So when these new, smaller drives appeared, the big companies weren't just ignoring them. They were looking at it, weren't they? Investing in R&D.
Exactly. Yeah, they did research them, developed prototypes even. But here's the kicker. Their own analysis, their marketing folks, their finance teams, all using what seems like totally rational data. They correctly figured out that their existing customers didn't want these smaller drives. Why? Well, they had lower capacity, maybe slower performance, the market seemed small initially, and crucially, the profit margins were thinner, much thinner.
So purely from a business perspective, the smart move, the rational choice, was stick with what works, what's profitable now.
Precisely. These very logical, data-driven decisions led them to pass on the smaller drives. Keep investing in the high-margin stuff. But here's the twist. Those smaller, supposedly inferior drives, they found a home. They ended up in totally new applications, new markets the big guys weren't even focused on, like 8-inch drives in mini computers, 5.25-inch in the first desktop PCs, 3.5-inch in laptops. And as these new markets exploded, and as the smaller drives inevitably got better, faster, held more data, they eventually became good enough, even for the mainstream market. But by that point, the new companies, the ones who had embraced the smaller drives early on, they were the dominant players. The established giants who did everything right for their existing business got left behind.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more, because it feels like this isn't just about hard drives, right? This pattern seems to pop up everywhere. What are the really critical principles this example shows us?
Oh, absolutely. It's a powerful recurring pattern. So first, Christensen distinguishes between sustaining versus disruptive innovation. Established companies, they're great at sustaining innovations. That means making existing products better for current customers. Faster chips, more megapixels, you know the drill. But disruptive innovations are different. They often start out performing worse on those traditional metrics, but they win on new things. Size, simplicity, convenience, maybe cost. They appeal to different customers or enable totally new uses. The key insight: incumbents are wired for better. Disruptors often win with different.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second principle?
Second is rational resource allocation. This explains why the big companies favor sustaining tech. It's simple. Predictable returns, clear market demand from existing customers. Investing makes sense on paper. Disruptive tech, that looks risky. On certain markets, lower margins at first, so rationally, they starve it of resources. It's logical, but ultimately damaging.
And you mentioned value networks earlier. That sounds a bit academic maybe, but it feels important here.
It's absolutely core to it. Think of value networks as the whole context a company operates in. It's their main customers, their suppliers, how they sell things, even their internal profit goals. It's like this strong current that just naturally pulls them towards serving those existing needs and away from anything that doesn't fit that established model. So a disruptive idea comes along, looks unprofitable by their current standards, doesn't fit their channels. The network rejects it.
Got it. And the last one, performance over supply. Yeah, performance over supply. This is huge. Companies often keep improving their products, adding features,
Yeah.
until they're actually way beyond what most of their customers need or want to pay for. You know that feeling. Using software with a million features when you only ever use 5, that creates an opening, an opportunity for something simpler, more accessible, that's good enough on the main stuff, but offers new benefits like ease of use. So the core dilemma is this: standard good management, listen to customers, chase profits, use data. These things ironically become roadblocks. They prevent companies from investing in disruptive innovations that initially just don't look very attractive according to those standard metrics. It's not bad management. It's rational management leading to vulnerability.
Okay, wow. So, with that really fascinating framework laid out, let's paint the picture. The design software world before Canva, what did that look like?
Right. Before Canva, digital design was really dominated by these incredibly powerful, established players, giants who'd spent decades building very sophisticated tools for pros. Adobe was the king, no question. The Creative Suite, later Creative Cloud, you know, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, these were the absolute industry standards. Every graphic designer, every agency, every publisher pretty much relied on them globally. And their business model, it was built on selling high-priced software licenses. Later, it shifted to premium subscriptions. Adobe's Creative Cloud, launched around 2012, kept that focus squarely on professionals and agencies, people who needed these tools for their jobs and were willing to pay top dollar. It was just the cost of doing business for them.
And these tools, definitely not click and go, right? I mean, you needed serious training, real expertise, sometimes years just to get good at one of them. I remember trying Photoshop once just to, like, change a font color, and it felt like trying to launch a rocket.
You're absolutely right. A professional designer might spend years mastering just Photoshop, all its tools, filters, layers, shortcuts. Hundreds of them. But their target customers, the pros, were willing to invest that time because their careers demanded that level of control, that pixel-perfect precision. So the competition between Adobe and others, like CorelDRAW or Quark Express back in the day, it became this kind of arms race of functionality. Every new version just piled on more features, more precise controls, more complex effects, always aimed at that high-end professional user. They were just listening to their core customers. But like we just discussed, that relentless feature creep led straight to performance oversupply. Sure, the software got incredibly powerful, but it also got incredibly complex. Intimidating interfaces, menus buried under menus. For anyone who wasn't a full-time designer, it's just overwhelming, completely inaccessible.
And that created this huge gap in the market, didn't it? You had millions of people, small business owners, marketers, teachers, regular folks. They needed to create designs, but they were totally locked out by the complexity and cost. So they ended up using, Word or PowerPoint, making things that were often, well, let's just say not quite professional looking. What does Christensen call that again? That untapped market.
That's exactly what he termed non-consumption. All those people who could have used a design tool but didn't because the existing options were just too hard, too expensive, or took too much time. And that area of non-consumption, that was the fertile ground just waiting for a disruptor. A market totally invisible to Adobe because their existing customers weren't asking for simpler tools.
And right into that fertile ground steps Canva, founded 2013, right? Melanie Perkins, Cliff Obrecht, Cameron Adams. And the origin story I heard came from Melanie Perkins teaching design software to students and just seeing how incredibly difficult it was for them.
That origin story is so important. It directly led to Canva's revolutionary initial idea: design for non-designers. See, they weren't trying to steal Adobe's pro customers, not at all. They aimed squarely at that huge untapped market of people needing designs without the training. They weren't fighting for the same customers or the same dollars initially. And Canva just screamed disruptive from the start. It had this dramatically simpler interface, really intuitive. It was all built around templates, drag and drop. You could make something look professional in minutes, literally with zero training. Sure, a pro might say, oh, I can't do X or Y, but for the non-designer, those limitations were totally irrelevant. They just needed something decent, fast. And crucially, Yeah, targeting non-consumption. They weren't trying to lure away Adobe's core users. They were bringing new people into the design world. Small business owners making flyers, teachers making worksheets, social media managers creating posts. Finally, a tool for them.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. How did technology itself actually enable Canva to pull this off? It wasn't just a clever idea, right? It needed the right tech at the right time.
Absolutely. Canva brilliantly leveraged emerging tech that the older established players kind of stuck with their desktop software legacy couldn't easily adopt. First off, Canva was built cloud native from day one. That's huge. No installing software, instant access from any web browser, your designs saved online so you can get them anywhere, share them easily. Just imagine the difference for a small business owner working from home, then in the office, then on the road. Total freedom. It also took full advantage of improving web technologies, HTML5, JavaScript, to make the experience in the browser feel smooth, responsive, almost like a native app. Remember older web tools, often clunky, maybe Flash-based? This was a leap forward in user experience online. So while Canva initially maybe underperformed on those pro metrics, super fine-tuned control, it absolutely crushed it on the new value metrics that mattered to non-designers. Things like ease of use, accessibility, just the sheer speed of creating something decent. A task taking an hour in Photoshop could be 5 minutes in Canva. That's a game changer.
Right, a totally different value proposition.
Exactly. And to tackle that blank canvas problem, staring at a white screen, Paralyzed Canva offered this massive library. Templates for everything, stock photos, icons, elements. Users could start with something good-looking and just tweak it. That lowered the barrier massively for beginners.
So it starts with this clever idea, targeting non-consumption, leveraging the cloud. But how did it grow into this absolute powerhouse, worth tens of billions today? What was the secret sauce on the business side?
Well, their freemium model was completely radical for the design world and a massive driver of growth. Remember, Adobe was charging hundreds a year for Creative Cloud. Canva, core features, totally free. They made money from optional extras, premium templates, better stock photos, advanced features in Canva Pro. That approach would have been almost unthinkable for Adobe, right? Their whole business was built on high-margin software. Canva essentially said, come on in, try it for free. If you love it and need more power, pay us a bit.
That must have lowered the barrier to entry dramatically.
Hugely. It let them build an enormous user base incredibly quickly. We're talking, over 170 million monthly active users now, something like 13 billion designs created. It tapped into those hundreds of millions of people who only needed to design tools occasionally. It massively expanded the total market, way beyond what Adobe's pricing could ever reach. They basically created their own market.
And that template-based approach you mentioned, how vital was that in, democratizing design?
Oh, incredibly vital. It really did democratize design. Suddenly, teachers could make beautiful classroom materials. Small businesses could design logos that didn't look homemade. Social media managers could churn out great-looking posts daily, all without needing any design training. It closed that quality gap for a huge chunk of users, making good enough easily achievable for almost anyone.
And thinking about the tech, again, that cloud-native architecture, did that give them ongoing advantages beyond just convenience as they grew?
Definitely. Being cloud native enabled rapid iteration in a way desktop software just couldn't match. Canva could push out improvements, new features, bug fixes sometimes weekly compared to maybe annual updates for traditional software. Plus, they had all this data from cloud analytics, seeing exactly how people use the product. That allowed for incredibly data-driven refinement. They could see what worked, what didn't, and adjust fast. And it created powerful network effects. Every new template, every new element added by Canva or even by users made the whole platform more valuable for everyone else. It just kept getting richer.
Makes sense. It's like a virtuous cycle.
Exactly. And they also embraced mobile really well, much earlier than the complex Pro Tools could manage effectively. Trying to cram Photoshop onto a phone screen. Tough. But Canva's simpler approach translated much better. They built dedicated apps, optimized for touch, opening up design for people on the go, creating a social media post while waiting for a bus, that kind of thing. And one more thing. Real-time collaboration. This was another game changer. Traditional design tools were mostly for solo creators. Canva let multiple people work on the same design at the same time, like Google Docs. For teams, especially remote teams, that was and is incredibly valuable. It just fit how modern work happens.
Okay, so you have this incredibly disruptive force emerging, using new tech, new business models, targeting a whole new market. How did the giant Adobe actually react to this initially?
Well, Adobe's initial reaction was pretty much textbook incumbent behavior, as Christensen would predict. They largely dismissed Canva. They likely saw it as, a simple toy, not a real threat to their core professional market. So they kept focusing on enhancing Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. for the pros, adding more power, more features. Their existing customers were happy, revenue was strong. So why panic? Eventually, though, they did respond more directly. They launched Adobe Spark back in 2016, which later got rebranded as Creative Cloud Express in 2021. This was their attempt at a simplified, template-based tool for non-professionals.
But just building a similar product wasn't enough, was it? That's the core of the dilemma, right? Why was it seemingly so hard for a company like Adobe, with all its resources, to effectively counter Canva?
Precisely. They faced huge challenges, completely typical for established companies facing disruption. First, their whole organizational structure and culture. Adobe was built from the ground up to serve professionals. Their product teams, marketing, sales, everything was optimized for that high-end market. Their company DNA was just fundamentally different from Canva's focus on mass market simplicity. It's like asking a Formula One team to suddenly design and sell minivans. Different skills, different priorities, different mindset needed.
Right. And the money aspect, the revenue model must have been a huge factor.
A massive factor. Adobe's entire valuation, their growth story for Wall Street, was tied to those high-margin Creative Cloud subscriptions from professionals and businesses. Any move that could truly compete with Canva's freemium model, like offering a genuinely powerful free tier themselves, would have faced enormous internal resistance. The fear of cannibalization, of undermining their main profit engine, was immense. That's the classic innovator's dilemma right there. Their current success became a barrier to effectively competing in this new disruptive space, even when they saw it emerging.
And just their philosophy about what makes a good product.
Exactly. Their product's philosophy, too.
Hmm?
Adobe products were all about depth, precision, ultimate control. That's what their core users valued. Creating something genuinely simple requires a totally different approach to user experience design. It's not just about removing features, it's about rethinking the entire workflow. It was incredibly difficult for them culturally to really embrace a good enough for the masses philosophy without feeling like they were compromising their core values or alienating their professional base.
Okay, so Canva starts in this non-consumption niche, grows rapidly. What happened next? Did it just stay there, happily serving the non-designers? Or did it start creeping upwards?
This is where we see another classic pattern for successful disruptors playing out. Canva didn't stand still. It strategically began moving upmarket. They started steadily adding more sophisticated features, things like better typography controls, more precise positioning tools, more advanced image editing capabilities. But, and this is key, they managed to do it while, for the most part, maintaining that core simplicity and ease of use. So the gap in pure functionality between Canva and Pro Tools started to narrow.
And they started targeting businesses more directly, too.
Right, exactly. The launch of Canva for Teams and later Canva for Enterprise was a direct challenge to Adobe in the corporate world. These versions added features crucial for businesses, brand kits to maintain consistency, approval workflows, shared asset libraries. Suddenly, many organizations realized that Canva could handle maybe 80%, even 90% of their day-to-day design needs at a much lower cost and with way less training required compared to Creative Cloud. The good enough point had moved up significantly.
So they didn't need the space shuttle for every single design task anymore.
Precisely. And Canva also expanded sideways. They moved boldly into video editing, website creation, presentations, and again, these new tools followed the disruptive pattern. Start simple, target easier use cases first, but continuously improve. Canva's video editor isn't trying to replace Adobe Premiere Pro for making Hollywood movies, but for social media clips, simple ads, internal videos, it's often perfectly adequate and much easier to use.
This sounds a lot like that jobs to be done idea you mentioned earlier.
It really does. It aligns perfectly with Christensen's jobs to be done framework. Canva isn't thinking in rigid product categories like photo editor. They're thinking about the job the user is trying to accomplish. Are they trying to create marketing materials? Make a presentation? Build a simple website? Promote something on social media? Canva aims to provide the tools to get that job done, regardless of the final format. This lets them expand broadly while staying focused on user needs.
Okay, so what's the critical thing happening now as Canva keeps adding features and moving up market?
The critical aspect now is that Canva is increasingly satisfying the needs of users who previously had to use Adobe tools. That performance oversupply we talked about. It means many mainstream customers are finding Canva is now good enough for them. And often it's actually more attractive because it's cheaper, easier to use, more collaborative, or more convenient. This puts Adobe in a really tough spot. The pressure is mounting, especially on their mid-market customers, the businesses and individuals who need good design, but maybe not the absolute cutting edge of professional features. Adobe has to figure out how to defend that segment without alienating its high-end pro users or damaging its core revenue streams. It's the dilemma playing out in real time. So, turning the tables. What does this mean for Canva itself? Is it possible that Canva, the disruptor, now faces the very same innovator's dilemma that Adobe did? Ironically, yes, absolutely. As Canva keeps adding features, moving up market, catering to more professional needs, it inherently becomes more complex. There's a real risk that it could compromise the very simplicity and ease of use that made it so disruptive in the first place. Every new feature, while valuable to some segment, potentially adds clutter or increases the learning curve for basic users. That tension adding power versus maintaining simplicity is very similar to the challenge Adobe faced. It suggests Canva itself could become vulnerable to new disruptors who come along with even simpler, more focused tools for specific tasks. The cycle potentially continues.
Right. And speaking of that next cycle, let's look ahead. What's the big disruptive force we're seeing now that could shake things up again?
Oh, without a doubt, it's artificial intelligence. AI is the next massive wave, and Canva has been incredibly aggressive in integrating AI throughout its platform. We're seeing AI for generating design suggestions, automatically resizing things for different platforms, removing backgrounds, creating text effects, even generating entire designs from just a text prompt with features like magic design.
Wow. So AI is making it even easier for non-designers.
Exactly. AI further democratizes design by automating tasks that used to require technical skill or a good eye. It continues Canva's core mission of lowering the barrier to entry, making sophisticated results accessible to everyone. Now, Adobe also has powerful AI, like Adobe Sensei, but it's often embedded within their complex professional tools, perhaps aimed at enhancing pro workflows. Canva's AI seems more focused on making design fundamentally easier for the average user. This could actually widen Canva's disruptive advantage, bringing even more people into their ecosystem.
But could AI also create an opening for someone to disrupt Canva?
It absolutely could. We just talked about Canva potentially becoming more complex. You can imagine new startups using AI even more aggressively to create ultra-simplified, perhaps single-purpose design tools, or maybe tools hyper-focused on specific niches, like AI-powered logo generation or automated video creation for social media. Mobile-first AI design tools, maybe. The Innovator's Dilemma framework suggests that Canva, as it becomes more established and complex, will face the same challenges responding to these new AI-native disruptors as Adobe faced responding to Canva. It's a fascinating, never-ending cycle. So, just to wrap up the Canva story through this lens, it's such a clear demonstration of Christensen's theory. They started by targeting non-consumption with a simpler, more accessible product. They perfectly leveraged technological shifts to cloud, better web tech, mobile. They used a disruptive freemium business model to gain massive scale. They relentlessly prioritized simplicity and accessibility over feature parity with incumbents, at least initially. And they brilliantly exploited the performance oversupply created by the complex Pro Tools. It ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, and that core message really hits home. The very management practices that drive success in stable markets, listening to your best customers, focusing on profits, can become huge liabilities when faced with disruptive change. It's a really tough lesson for established companies. They become vulnerable not necessarily because they're doing things wrong, but because they're doing the right things for their current reality, which blinds them to the future.
And what's really striking today is just the speed of this cycle. This drive disruption played out over decades, multiple generations of tech. With Canva and Adobe, this whole dynamic unfolded in roughly a decade. That acceleration makes understanding these principles even more vital for everyone in any industry.
So as we finish up, here's something for you to think about. As technology keeps accelerating, as new good enough solutions keep popping up everywhere, how might these principles of the innovator's dilemma apply to industries you see or interact with every day? Is there a complex product, an expensive service, something widely used that feels maybe a bit over-engineered? Could it be right for its own simple, accessible disruption? What stands out to you about this powerful, repeating pattern of innovation and disruption?